Welcome to the Wyoming Women's Business Center webinar series, Credit Reports 101. Learn the ins and outs of your credit report. I'm Jonathan Howdeshell, one of the business counselors for the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and I will be your moderator today. Our speaker today is Waldo Smith. He is our Microloan Director and a business counselor here at the Wyoming Women's Business Center. Waldo has several years of experience in agricultural lending, commercial loans, and microlending. He is proficient in preparing and analyzing balance sheets, income statements, cash flow projections, and monitoring adherence to them. He also spent 4 years as a financial director for a local non-for-profit prior to joining the WWBC. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and type in Wyoming Women's Business Center. Make sure you subscribe and check out our other videos. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat area and I will ask them for you. Now, without further ado, I present to you Waldo Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here with you on this snowy day in Laramie. Spring is not quite here yet, but I think it's on its way, so that's good to know. Today we're going to be looking at credit reports, and probably the first question we would have is, what is a credit report? That's the basic question to start with. So a definition that I pulled off the internet is a detailed report of an individual's credit history prepared by a credit bureau to arrive at a FICO score, and it's used by a lender to determine a loan applicant's creditworthiness, or in some cases by a landlord in screening potential tenants. So the next question might be, what is a FICO score? Well, FICO stands for Fair Isaac Company. This is a company here in the United States that developed an algorithm that takes several factors into consideration and then arrives at a score. And the score then is used to determine a person's creditworthiness. So who creates credit reports? Well, there are three agencies within the United States who do gather this information and then uses these algorithms to prepare a score. They are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Now, originally, Experian covered the upper Midwest, upper mountain states of the country. TransUnion was primarily the West and the Southwest region, and Equifax was East Coast and Southeast United States. Creditors report to 1, 2, or 3 of these. For example, on our microloans, we report credit history to Experian and TransUnion. So if you pull what they call a tri-merge credit report, you will get a score from each company, and they may be different, or most likely will be different, because some companies do not report to all three. So, for example, I pulled mine recently, and Equifax score was less than the other two, simply because a lot of the companies, a lot of the creditors that I have don't report to Equifax. So what factors make up your FICO score or a credit report score? There are several. The first is personal data. When you pull your credit bureau report, it's going to show your name, your address, previous addresses. It will show your social security number, or at least the last 4 digits, and it will may show employment history. It will give a summary of your credit history, the number of accounts you've had over the last 7 years, what your payment history has been with them, what your high balance has been, what your average balance and payments have been. It will tell how long that account's been opened. how much you've used it. It will tell who has pulled credit reports on you, on your name, in the last 12 months time. It gives details of accounts that have been turned over to collection agencies for liens, garnishments, collections, judgments, and it will tell you how to go about reporting any information that you dispute as being incorrect. So who can assess your credit report? Well, creditors who are looking at a loan application or are servicing an existing loan have permission by virtue of your application to pull a credit bureau report. So if you go into a bank and apply for an auto loan or a home loan, they're going to pull a credit bureau report, and it'll say on the application you signed, you give them permission. If you apply for a microloan through our organization, the application you fill out has an area that says you're giving permission for us to pull a credit report. If you have an existing loan, periodically the creditor may pull a report to see if there is any new history that shows up that they should be concerned about, especially if you begin to get late on payments. Then they will likely pull a credit report. Landlords are now starting to pull credit reports to see if people are paying their bills on time, what their repayment history has been, because they don't want to have an apartment or a home being occupied when they're not receiving their rent payments. Employers are starting to pull credit bureau reports on potential employees. Not everyone, but the people who make the final cuts, the final applicants for consideration. But the main thing to consider or to remember is that a credit report can only be pulled for a legitimate business reason. Joe Blow can't go out and just pull a credit report on you if he has your name and social security number. That's not legal. I can tell you a story, having been in the banking industry years ago. There was a young lady working at a bank that decided, since she was in charge of pulling credit reports for credit applications, she thought, well, this would be a good way to screen potential boyfriends. So she would get information on guys that were asking her out on dates, and she would pull a credit bureau report on them to see if they paid their bills or not. Well, some of her friends found out about it, and they asked for the same thing, so she started pulling credit reports on potential boyfriends for her friends. Well, when the bank was examined and this was discovered, the bank was fined, and this young lady lost her job because that is not legal. You cannot do that. So if you happen to get a copy of your credit report and you see that somebody's pulled a report on you that you didn't authorize, you can contact them and ask reason why, check into it. So the Fair Isaac score, or a credit report score that you see, it will range usually between 350 and 850. 850 is a perfect score, and 350 is a minimum score. The lowest it'll go, you'll either have 350 or no score at all, depending on your credit, whether you've used credit in the past. But here are some things that factor into this score. And this is a report that I received several years ago, so it may have changed a little bit. But if you have had a mortgage or a rent that's being reported to the credit bureau and you have no late payments, that is a positive. If you have 1 to maybe 2 installment loans, these would be like loans on a car, loans to buy household appliances or something, a boat, a motorcycle, snowmobile in this area, but no more than 2, and you have no late payments there. That's a positive. If you have one major credit card, MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and you pay the balance off every month. You charge on it, but you pay it off every month. That is a positive. And maybe 1 or 2 other cards, like a Target card. Used to be gas card companies offered cards, Phillips 66, Conoco, Standard Oil. If you had one of those that you used each month and paid off at the end of the month or into the billing cycle, those 4 things would count towards your score and maximize your score. No collections, of course, no judgments, no bankruptcies, and a limited number of inquiries would get you towards that 850 level or score maximum. If you have more cards than what I'm showing here, or you don't pay your cards every month, or you have 1 late payment, then that starts subtracting from your score. And keep in mind that if you have a late payment, or something gets turned over to a collection agency, or a judgment gets filed, negative information stays on your report for 7 years. So it factors into your score for the next 7 years. Bankruptcies stay on your report for 10 years. So you need to avoid these at all costs if you can. Like I said, negative information stays on your report for a period of time. To maximize your score, or to get your score built back up, the thing to do is to start paying off any collections and judgments as soon as possible. Get them satisfied. Keep your current accounts current. Make sure you pay your payments on time or within the late period that may apply. So what should you do on a regular basis? Monitor your bank statements and your credit card statements. I would suggest keeping receipts from any charge. Anytime you use a debit card or a credit card, keep your receipts and check them against your statements when they come out. This way you will quickly pick up on any unauthorized charges to any of those cards. If you discover an unauthorized charge, report it immediately upon discovery. If it's on your debit card, call your bank. If it's on your credit card, call your credit card company. Just to give you 2 examples, this happened in my life. We went to a nearby town years ago. My wife used a credit card to purchase a pair of shoes, and we didn't think anything of it. About 4 months later, we got a bill from the credit card company, and we looked, and there was a charge for a pair of shoes 4 months after the fact. And we looked at the date that that charge occurred and said we weren't even in that town on that day. We called the store up, and come to find out there was an employee that had kept our information and had, along with several other customers, and had charged purchases to our account. We contacted the credit card company, and they reversed the charge and fixed it for us. The same thing can happen with debit cards. So watch your statements and be aware of the charges you're making. And then pull a credit report on yourself at least annually. And this is to check for, 1, what your score is doing, and 2, to check for any suspicious activity. I heard a story years ago about a gentleman living in Chicago that really didn't use credit at all, and then he decided to buy a house and applied for a mortgage. and came back and his credit score was in the 400s, which he said is not possible. You know, he never even had a charge card or a credit card. Well, they found out that someone had obtained his identity and had applied for loans in Southern California and had defaulted on loans, and it took him 2 years of steadily working at it to get all of that history expunged from his record and to prove that none of those applied to him. So if you check your credit report annually, you can help pick up on some things that identity theft or things that could happen. So where do you go to get a free credit report? Well, if you've applied for a loan at a bank and they turn you down because of poor credit scores, they have to provide you information on who to contact to get a free report. And you can contact the credit bureau, they will send one to you. But there are also some sources online that you can go to pull a report yourself. And so 4 of them are Credit Karma, who gives you an Equifax and a TransUnion score. Credit Sesame gives you a TransUnion score. Credit.com will give you an Experian score. And Quizzle is one that'll give you a TransUnion score. There are other companies out there, but these are just 4 that I've pulled out. I have used Credit Karma. They do a very good job. They tell you what is negatively affecting your score so that you know things you can do to improve your score, things to correct and work on. But keep in mind, when you go to these websites, they give you the report for free, but in return for that, you are giving them information, a name, social security number, address, personal information on yourself. The scores that they give you are not the same scores that a bank will use in analyzing an application from you. They'll be fairly close or fairly similar, but lenders have the option of using other algorithms to determine scores, so they will likely not match perfectly. Free credit scores from these sources are not necessarily FICO scores. They're calculated similarly, but they are not an actual FICO score. And in exchange for you giving the information and they giving you a free credit report, they also then add you to their internal marketing list, which means their sponsoring agencies will start contacting you for other services or for loans potential. One of the things that Credit Karma does is they say for so much, for a premium of so much money, we will give you notifications of when your score changes or if anybody pulls a credit report on you. You don't need that information unless you're really interested in it, but a free credit report is a free credit report. You should never have to pay for a credit report yourself unless it's associated with a loan application. Now, I say that with a qualifier. As part of our services, we do offer some credit counseling. If you choose to know what your FICO score is, you can, for a nominal fee, have us pull a credit report, because when we pull them, we have to pay for them. And so we could actually pull an actual report for you, provide you a copy, and go over it with you to see what things may be necessary to change or to work on. But I would tell you, you can go to one of these websites and pull one for free, and we can give you the same counseling. It's just not, there wouldn't be a cost involved. So what if you find an error on your credit report? Well, the main thing to do is to contact the creditor directly and tell them that you are disputing this charge that they have reported. Like I told you with the credit card instance, we're on the shoe store from my past. We had to contact Visa and tell them this is not our charge. And they are required to research it. And sometimes it takes up to 30 days for them to refund you. But if it is definitely not your charge, they have to take it off of your account. If there is a late payment reported and you've made all of your payments on time, you need to contact the lender that the loan is with or the account is with, and report to them that there's an error and have them correct it. Now, if something's been turned over to collection, that gets a little bit more complicated, but that's why you pull a credit report on a regular basis to check for any errors. And so that's a real brief explanation. At this point, I think it would be more beneficial if you have specific questions that you can submit. We can answer those for you. While you're submitting those questions, I do want to point out that our funding for the Wyoming Women's Business Center comes from three main sources. They are the Wyoming Business Council, the Small Business Administration, and the USDA Rural Development. And so we thank them for their support of the services we provide. And I'm putting up my contact information. If you have any further questions after today that you would like to submit or talk to us about, you can contact me at these phone numbers and this email address. So with that, are there any questions?
Yes, I do have a question from Debbie. It says, I check my credit score anytime through my credit card. Is this based on all three scoring companies or just one of them? And the rest of the question is, if it is based on one scoring company, how close will this score be versus all three?
That's a very good question. A lot of credit cards now are providing you with free credit scores. I think there's a Capital One card that does that. Discover card does that. They will likely be from the company that the credit card issuer uses most frequently for pulling credit scores. And you would have to ask them specifically. Discover, for example, may be a combination of all three credit bureaus, and so it could be an average score. I don't know for sure. You would have to ask them. But most likely it is a score that they have come up with on their own calculation, and so it may not be a true FICO score. Again, they could provide you that information if you would ask. One of the seminars I recently attended that I gathered information for this presentation, the lady had pulled credit scores from 6 different sources. And she pulled from Credit Karma, she pulled from credit.com, Quizzle, and the fourth source, and those 4 scores were all the same, but then she pulled the score from her credit card and from a credit bureau report that she'd actually gotten a copy of from someone, another party, and the last 2 differed from the first 4. They weren't significant, but they were slightly different. And I can tell you that when I pull a tri-merged report, or a report that covers all 3 credit bureaus, rarely do I see 2 of them the same, and almost never do I see all 3 scores the same. It's simply a matter of who reports to the credit bureau as to whether or not that history is going to be reflected into your score.
I have a question from Alice, and she asks, what about the website annualcreditreport.com? Is that also, does that provide free reports also?
Yes.
It says it's supposed to provide free reports. That's what it says, sorry.
Yes, I believe they do provide you with a free report. I have used them in the past. They've been advertised previously. I don't see them advertised as much anymore, but they are, once you get your score, they do offer you options for additional information that they ask you to pay for. So that is a source that you can use for obtaining your score to see kind of where you stand. One thing I should mention, one of the factors that affects your score is the number of inquiries submitted. That's the number of people that have asked for credit reports on you. So if you go to, for instance, here in Laramie, you go to Bank of the West and you apply for a loan. And then you go you go loan shopping, and you just go to several banks in town and apply for loans to see which one will give you the best rate. Each time they pull a credit report, that factors into your score and starts dropping your score incrementally. Now, it may be only 1 or 2 points. The only time that doesn't happen is if you go to a car dealership and you apply for financing through the dealership, and they send out your application to, say, 6 creditors, and all 6 pull a credit bureau report on you and then come back with an offer, and the dealer picks the best offer. Although there were 6 credit reports pulled, they were all pulled on the same day. And so the laws changed several years ago that says if multiple reports are pulled in the same day for the same reason, they are not to affect your score, because it's someone shopping on your behalf for the best rate.
Well, thank you, Waldo. Let me see if there's any more questions here. One more question. It's do inquiries through my credit card to look at just these scores, does that have a negative effect?
I would say where your credit card company is providing that score to you, it would not have a negative effect on your score. They are obviously checking things on a regular basis, and they are coming up with a score for you for your convenience. You should not be penalized for that. And so, one thing you can do is, if the score is showing up on each of your statements each month, monitor that for a couple of months to see if it changes up or down. It should not change at all if you are paying attention and making your payments on time.
Well, thank you, Waldo, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. If anybody has any more questions, now's a great time to ask. But I'll close up, and if I do see any more questions, I'll ask them. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and please fill out the survey at the end when you close out. We appreciate it very much when you do. Our next webinar will be presented on April 14th, and the topic will be Customer Appreciation and Marketing, presented by Mariana Clemens. Thank you again for joining us, and if you have any questions in the future, please feel free to contact us. Have a great day.